Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for my final thoughts on Rebel Raiders of the High Seas and on the High Seas, Rebel Raiders on the High Seas. I'm so sorry. I have very much enjoyed learning this game and playing it through. I'm just going to back my camera off so that we can see a bit more. Yes, oh yeah, by the way, if you notice something down there, I have got Oscar with me because he has come to lend his thoughts as well. So you may see a bit of tail flick going back and forth. But I really just wanted to talk about the bits of the game that I really like. And this isn't anything particular to the rules. It's more about the sense that I have of this game because I find for a game that's really quite simple, it also offers a really immersive experience because you've got so much to think about, and therein lies a great strength of this game. Some very quite complicated stuff is boiled down into a pretty straightforward system. So if I just grab the back of the box so that I can sensibly sorry, Oscar's having a glance at the camera stand. This may be one of those faintly interesting videos where I don't totally get to say what I want to say because I'm busy fighting off the cat, but never mind. What was I talking about? Yes, the map. As you know from the previous videos, get off. The map is a massive winner as far as I am concerned. And the reason for that is... Ah, oh, cats, who'd have them? You get a very nice space. It's, everything is presented very coherently. Most of what you need to know is either on this map, yes, Oscar, map, or it's on those handy reference cards to the side. So this game presents you with decisions in a nice, clearly defined space, and you have all the information you need. You're not burdened with things like detailed shipping production tables. There's no weapon performance tables or anything like that. The game, in a sense, worries about that because at this grand strategic level, it's not really your job. By the same token, however, I am very glad of the level of tactical as well as strategic control that the game gives you over the naval battles. And it's really nice touches like the number of dice different units roll. So if you've got a screw sloop, you're going to roll 2 dice offensively, whereas an ironclad rolls 1, generally speaking. And I like that touch because it'd be so easy for a game that's going for a level of simplicity to just go, right, ironclads represent the world-killing top of the food chain. We'll give them the best dice rolls and the best armor. So if people raise an eyebrow as to why wooden screw sloops that the Union employs in vast numbers get double the firepower of an ironclad, well, the simple answer is that they've got many more guns, and equally importantly, the disposition of guns on a wooden screw sloop gives them a much better field of fire than the restricted traverse you get even within a casemated, never mind a ironclad, never mind a turreted monitor. So I really appreciate little wrinkles like that you see throughout this game, which gives it this air of realism. The poor gunboats, of course, they die like flies. They contribute to their bit, they put their bit forward in battle, but then they get hit and damaged or destroyed on a 4+ on a 6-sided dice. So that their lives are short and violent, let's put it that way. What about the cards? I think the card decks are very, very well designed in terms of their content. I like that you get a mixture of leaders like young Farragut here and historical ships like the Passaic, or just other general events like, let's see if I can find something good. Engine breakdown, which is a great way of messing up a Confederate ironclad. And I do love that the illustration they've used for engine breakdown is CSS Louisiana. Very distinctive profile there. Very handsome looking ironclad, but I don't think they ever got her engines working properly. So that's a lovely thing. Many of these cards are surprise cards that you play on an opponent during a combat. Those of you who remember the previous video will recall that I suddenly turned one of the Union's ordinary ironclads into the USS Monitor, which has a special ability. Now, while I'm on that subject, and this is true for the Confederate deck as well, because the Confederates have a decent collection of ships, both blockade runners and warships. If you're very sort of purist about your Civil War, you might find this a bit of a stumbling block, as again, with reference to my previous video, what the heck is USS Monitor doing suddenly popping up in the battle for Forts Henry and Donaldson in the summer of 1862? That doesn't make any sense. The designers do address this. If they had implemented named ships with very specific orders of appearance and very clearly defined roles within the game, it would have not only added a lot to the bookkeeping, but implicitly, from what I read in their designers' notes, is also the idea that if you do too much of that, particularly with a naval war like the American Civil War, you end up overly scripting the thing. I quite like the idea that while broadly keeping within historical parameters, you do get the opportunity for interesting things to happen and familiar household names to turn up in unexpected places. So in my first learning game, which didn't make it onto camera, CSS Virginia never went anywhere near Hampton Roads. For all I know, the hulk of the Merrimack was still lying at the bottom of the bay. But she did appear very suddenly. It was a nasty shock to the oncoming Union ships when they tried to make a seaborne landing against Wilmington. So not outside the realms of possibility. Would have been a bit more work to build her down there, admittedly. But then the Confederates did have the ambition of trying to build some semblance of ironclad in most of their major ports. And places like New Orleans, if they'd been a bit better organized and had the money to do it, then perhaps they might have been a tiny bit more successful. In addition to that, I should add also the industrial capacity to do it, as that's the really important thing. Of course, nowhere else in the Confederacy could you recreate the naval yards at Norfolk. But the designers address this too, and they say in the case of Confederate ships, just regard it as another ironclad that may have been present there, but is not represented by name in the game, and that's fair enough because each side probably has about a dozen, maybe 15 named ships in their deck. And if we just look at ironclads, and I think this is a statistic I've thrown out before, by the end of the war, the Confederate States had commissioned 22 of the things and the Union had commissioned 60. So they will pop up, and if it doesn't suit your fancy, that it's Monitor on the Mississippi, then just think of her as something else. But I've probably lingered upon that minor niggle a bit too much. Another thought I had when looking at the way this game works is how different the two sides feel, as is right. The mechanics for how their ships operate are basically the same. You use the same sort of movement points. But they both have to do very different sorts of running around, and I like the fact that they feel so different. The Confederates will find that their units on the map very seldom move once they're deployed, unless they are raiders or blockade runners. For the most part, as the Confederacy, what you're doing is thickening up the defences of your ports and doing your best to keep them open as long as you can. You're also, if you're a Confederate player who's on the ball, you're keeping a wary eye on your rivers, particularly the Mississippi. You need to keep that open as long as you can. And the Mississippi, by its nature gives you some strategic choices. You can shuttle forces up and down the river. It influences how you fight battles as well. Do you stake everything on holding a particular location, like I did during that learning game, throwing everything at island number 10 and praying that it doesn't crack, only to bury my head in my hands when the Union lands an almighty blow and the island falls. Um, with the other ports, your back is very much to the wall. You try and guesstimate where the Union is going to come in and try and capture your ports, and then you just defend it as much as you can. And of course, the Union has lots of work to do too. They do outnumber the South, and their resources grow as the game goes on. But the frightening thing for the Union is that there is still never enough of anything. And as you slowly grow in capability, you'll move from a period where the Confederates seem to have a lot of it their way to a point about mid-war where you can reliably say, okay, I'm going to target this port this turn, and I can reasonably expect to take it unless the rebels have some nasty surprises. Sometimes they do. What makes it very painful for the Union is in the basic game they are restricted to one seaborne assault every turn, unless card play allows you to do more. So you really feel the pressure as the Union. And if you play with the optional rule which models the Union's resolve, then you're not only having to watch the clock, you're also having to watch the willingness of your population to put up with the losses and the expense and the other sacrifices that a wartime effort like this is going to demand of you. It is quite painful, and you can never relax as the Union. I was going to say the fact that a lot of Confederate units don't move when you place them belies the fact that a lot of thinking does go on while you're watching the Union's moves, particularly because you then get the stress of seeing, did I defend the right area? While the Union player is equally thinking, drat, he's built up the defences at exactly the point I wanted to go. And then both, of course, following on from the events of each other's turns, have to be thinking ahead to how they're going to counter anything that's happened. At the end of my demonstration of the Union turn, okay, they took one of their three objectives, but that turn could have definitely gone better. And the advance out of Richmond being stymied by muddy weather, that was just so frustrating. And of course, the important question is, what are you going to do about it in the next turn? Because we're one step closer to the end of the game. As with many Civil War simulations, the Confederates can win passively just by denying the Union their objectives. But I will put in a warning about that. If you're a bit too passive and you go for turtling at the expense of everything else, it hands the Union the priceless strategic initiative of being able to conduct his maneuvers and do whatever he wants to you. So you do have to take some offensive action. The Confederacy does sometimes have to sink precious resources into counterattacks over land. Richmond need to take that back. Um, and at sea as well, you've got very few build points, but you earn a lot of your victory points through blockade running and commerce raiding. Now, which is the more lucrative is the question the Confederate has to ask themselves, because the how you answer that question will determine your strategy. It is possible, if you wish to play this game with no raiders in play at all, although be a very disappointing Confederate player if they try that. But equally, you could do without the blockade runners and just try and flood the Union with as many raiders as you can. Peel their naval units away from the coast because they're having to scour the oceans of the world looking for you. Now, again, the game very cleverly keeps you within historical parameters, such as the state of the Southern economy and Southern shipbuilding capability. that you will not be commissioning dozens of raiders every turn. That simply will not happen. In fact, again, barring card play, the Confederacy is restricted to one every turn. And they have to be built and armed in Europe. So if you're very obviously telegraphing that strategy, which emphasizes raiding above all else, the Union player will soon pick up on it and have a lot of ships hovering in mid-Atlantic and off the African coast, just waiting for you to try and come out. So I realize I'm rambling a bit here in my excitement, but I hope that sort of touched on the things that I really like about this game. Um, there aren't really any niggles. I've mentioned the slight weirdness of named ships popping up ahistorically in places that they don't belong. Related to that, you may get some oddities like Grant taking command in the Eastern Theatre at the end of 1862. That, you know, it wouldn't be the only American Civil War game I have that allows that kind of thing. And to their credit, the designers have factored in certain things that will ensure that truly wild stuff never happens. So here's a very minor example from the Confederate deck. You probably noticed from my previous videos, and here you go, it's there in black and red. That card, the Robert E. Lee, cannot be played in 1861. And similarly, a lot of the more important event and leadership cards cannot be played outside their own time. So you get a bit of variability in this alternate universe, but it's not taken to a crazy extreme. And I think that they've judged the position of that very well. I think it's quite a balanced game. I've looked a bit more at the optional rules. I haven't tried them yet, but they are quite nice. They're very well thought out, and actually implementing, I think, would add a bit more historical fidelity to this game. So that the you can use as many or as few as you like, but the more optional rules you add, like the Union Resolve rule and improved Union shipbuilding capacity and so on, it does make the game more historical in its feel at the cost of added detail and playtime. And speaking of playtime, just to return to an observation I made in one of the previous videos, the really beautiful thing, which of course they tell you in the rules and on the side of the box, is the ability to link this game with Iron and Oak. I think that is fantastic, especially given that both games are by different designers. I think that that level of joined up thinking is absolutely wonderful. And it's great because, as hopefully you've seen in my other videos about that game, Iron and Oak can be quite quick playing as tactical simulations of American Civil War naval combat go. So the two make really natural bedfellows, and I'm really glad that they are linked that way. And I'm really glad that I've got both of them. So, yes, I'm not too sure there's much more to say about this game that I haven't already said. But if you've got any particular observations, I do note a load of comments have already been rolling into my previous videos, and thank you so much for those, guys. I will reply to you as soon as I can. But thank you for your insights. I really do appreciate them. Some of you have mentioned you already own this game and are encouraged to go back to it. I really would recommend it, and good on you for blowing the dust off it. I think you will enjoy it a great deal. I certainly am going to come back to this game as soon as possible. It is another win for GMT. They've produced an absolute gem of a game on on a topic that I won't say is difficult to get right, because many other designers have done the Civil War at Sea very well. But given how many good titles there are out there, all of them with slightly different emphasis, some tactical, some strategic, this does very well to stand out from the crowd and be that really good mix of a game that you don't have to take too seriously because it's not too heavy. I think Rebel Raiders on the High Seas could be a very social game, especially between experienced players, because it's not a bookkeeping heavy game. and while your brains are never shutting down because of the strategic planning element, in terms of having to spend half your life moving counters, there is none of that in this game. Small number of counters, a lot of them don't move once they're placed. So it's a fun one, and you can play it in an evening. That's the other beauty of it. So a really nice balanced design. Definitely a must, I would say, for American Civil War aficionados. But also just for people who like a nice, tight, competitive game where both sides feel quite different and the situation is very asymmetrical. In a way, elements of it remind me of Twilight Struggle, that level of complexity, but also that level of playable enjoyment. So I'll end that there. As always, guys, thank you so much for engaging so much with the channel. It's always brilliant to see you. And I really appreciate the company most of all and the feedback. It's really, really wonderful. So thank you for following this series. For those of you who have declared your intentions to either stand by the union or go down the Southern Rights Hurrah route. I wish you much enjoyment of this game. I hope you have a wonderful time with it. To those of you who haven't tried it, please do get it. It's still obtainable and it's not that expensive as war games go, and it's pretty widespread. So odds are you may know someone who has a copy. So if you get the chance, give it a try. I think you'll like it. But inevitably, I get to this stage in my videos to all my long-suffering veterans out there who are miraculously still with me. A very heartfelt thank you and a fond farewell until next time. And equally to anyone who's new, welcome to my channel. If it's this game that brought you here, you're more than welcome. Please look at the other videos and indeed have a meander round the rest of it. But I will let you all go. So until the next one, whoever you are, wherever you're watching from, all best wishes, thank you again, and do take care. Bye.